Welcome to episode 238 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest insight scoop on everything 5G and 6G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshul Sag. Let's get started, my friend, with my first topic, and I want to talk about AST SpaceMobile. I've actually got a low Earth orbit satellite themed set of topics this week, but I'm going to start first with AST. And news is broke that they have conducted the first space-based 4G VoLTE call with Bell Canada. This includes voice, it includes broadband, data connectivity, and video streaming. And so, you and I have talked about AST on many episodes of our podcast. They've had some delays in launching their production satellites. They've got line of sight to that now. I shared some details earlier this week or last week about that, but this is another great example of their tech stack, number one. And number two, this just paves the way to production and monetization from my standpoint. So what do you think about all that, my friend?
I think it's an interesting expansion of their capabilities.
Yeah.
And it makes sense when you consider how rural Canada is.
Mm-hmm.
It actually makes even more sense than the United States. So yeah, I think it's a good move, and they have such good partnerships around the world that it makes total sense.
Yeah, for sure. And you're absolutely right about Canada. What's really interesting, you have these like wide expanses in between, several clusters of very highly populated cities. So I think this is going to be transformative, with respect to coverage gaps and that sort of thing in Canada. But it'll be fun to watch for sure. But hey, let's go to your first topic. And I know that you are hanging out in Hawaii. It's your annual rite of passage, right? At Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit. And, I was kind of paying attention to your live tweets and all of that. There was quite a bit that was announced this year, right?
Yeah, it was quite a big summit this year. There's a lot to talk about, so I'm going to make it as fast as I can because it would take up the whole podcast if I just droned on.
Okay.
Basically, they launched 2 new SoCs, one for smartphones, one for PCs. Both of them use the 3rd generation Orion custom processor that they created in-house, which is ARM v9 compatible. And it's really interesting because that CPU, both in mobile and on PC, is the fastest CPU in the respective markets for ARM. So it's faster than Apple. And I did some benchmarks, and their SoC for mobile is faster than Apple's latest A19 Pro, which I have in front of me, both in the iPhone Air, which I didn't have a visual representation of before, but I do now. And then on top of that, the X2, so it's a Snapdragon X2 Elite, which is for PCs, and that's a 5 gigahertz mobile processor, which is kind of a big deal as well, because that's way faster than anything Apple has. Competitively, it's faster than an M4, but it's about on par with an M4 Pro, which is really impressive when you consider how capable Apple is and how long they've been doing this. In addition to that, the PC parts have a built-in modem. I believe it's a 4G modem, and it's called Guardian, and it's actually for remote access to the PC. So even if the PC is turned off and you're like an IT person, you can actually turn on the PC remotely through a highly secure component. So it's designed so that it's a very secure enclave. So you can remotely manage your PCs for your infrastructure. So it's a really interesting, unique feature. And there's multiple ways of implementing it. But if you have a modem built into the PC, that's the easiest way. And there will be 5G modems for both devices. Interestingly enough, the X85 for the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, which is the full mobile SoC name, and then a Snapdragon X75 for the PC part, because there's less demand for the ultimate high-end 5G modem in PCs. You can use the X85 in both, but they expect that most people won't be using their most high-end 5G modem. And then on top of all that, Qualcomm CEO said on stage that they expect to have pre-commercial 6G devices in 2020, as early as 2028, which
Okay.
I take to mean, probably, some kind of prototypes, but working ones, and most likely be aligned with the Olympics, which happened with 5G, if you remember.
Hmm.
So I have a feeling we'll get some 6G demos and some 6G trials in LA, and they're probably already planning for them.
Yeah. Hey, the Guardian thing is really interesting. So that's silicon, right? That's like sort of root of trust. Is that how they're implementing that?
Yeah, so Guardian is going to be hard built into the SoC.
Okay.
It is for security and management. Um, it was probably one of the least talked about things, but there's actually a lot of detail about it,
Hmm.
because there's so many components of the SoC, that you can really like take advantage of it. Really, I think at enterprise, but even at the consumer level, like you could be a consumer who needs remote locate and wipe and lock, and those are all things you could do on your PC that you previously couldn't.
Right.
And then you could also have that as another layer of theft protection, because you can lock your PC basically anytime. Um, and yeah, I just think that there's a good opportunity to kind of um, move management towards a cellular based experience.
Yeah. No, I agree, and it's just it's impressive how Qualcomm continues to raise the bar and integrate new features, and this is something new. So I mean, I was surprised to learn about it myself, and I'll be digging into it a little bit further because it crosses my coverage area as well. I mean, you typically cover security on end devices, and I cover kind of more of the infrastructure, side of things. But I love that feature, and I think that's going to be really obviously advantageous, and obviously in corporate environments where IT staffs have to be able to manage devices, not only smartphones but PCs. So good stuff, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to my second topic, and I'm gonna stick to the low Earth orbit satellite theme, and I want to talk about T-Mobile. And they had an official announcement today around T-Satellite. We talked about T-Satellite when they launched it in production. Now, very very quickly after that initial launch, they have basically announced app support for that service with Starlink, and they're focused on, I mean, it's not the entire app ecosystem, but it's covering their T-Life app, which is something that I use to manage my FWA service, within my home in Bastrop. But they've also got some really interesting solutions, some app solutions that they're supporting. All Trails, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's for hikers, cyclists, runners, and it maps in over 500,000 trails around the world. AccuWeather, I mean, we're all concerned about the weather and what we're going to wear when we step out the door. So AccuWeather is going to get support, and there are a number of other solutions, including WhatsApp and even X as well. So this is pretty impressive, and so it's definitely taking the usability for SOS and emergencies to new levels, and it's quite impressive. They continue to kind of keep the pace going with respect to their T satellite service and what they're doing, and we're gonna begin, I think, to see future expansion into first responder and other use cases. But you're an app guy. Like, what do you think about all this? Is this going to move the needle? Is this going to be compelling for T-Mobile?
I think so. I think the problem is it's still fundamentally a niche service,
Right.
um, because there's just not that many people who are regularly going into places without service.
Hmm.
So there's definitely a certain type of person who will benefit from this, but I think ultimately a lot of these things are very situational and month to month almost.
Right.
So I think there's some really good benefits to it, um, but I think that um, the problem is that like you have to really live in these places, and the truth is living in these places, there's not that many people, um, but I think people who are regularly outdoors, this is great service, these are great apps, great
Yeah.
services, um, but I think they also have to do marketing for awareness. So when people are out of service, that they know that this is something that they can rely on, and
Sure.
that's a marketing problem. But ultimately, I think satellite for smartphones is still pretty limited.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, this is just, the start, I think, of what's to come. But it's quite compelling from my perspective. So yeah, good stuff there. Well, let's shift to your second topic, and you want to provide an update on MediaTek and a new Dimensity solution.
Yeah. So in addition to Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit, we also got new mobile SoCs from MediaTek, specifically the Dimensity 9500. This was their new flagship part, and they already announced a bunch of OEMs who are going to take advantage of it. This one uses the latest IP from ARM. So this is the new ARM IP that was announced a few weeks ago. And that IP is new CPU that's called the C1. And then there's the G1, which is the GPU. And so basically it takes all of the highest and newest capabilities from both those companies and leverages them effectively. And it's a new SoC, so it's going to be fast in a lot of ways, and it's going to allow for better performance, lower kind of like power efficiency, or better power efficiency, lower power, better ray tracing. They said it doubled the ray tracing capabilities. And MediaTek also implemented their own NPU in there, which is a very high performance but also low power NPU. So they're really looking at trying to level up a lot of the flagship offerings that they have currently in the US. Flagship MediaTek processors are only in the Samsung Galaxy tabs. But abroad in China, there a lot of the Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi's like to use MediaTek processors in their flagship phones. And I think they're going to be very competitive with what Qualcomm has, but I'm not sure they're actually going to be able to surpass them, which is fine. But they're always chasing each other and trying to outdo one another. And I think there's a lot of room for MediaTek and Qualcomm to compete with one another and offer the best that's available for Android.
Yeah,
and they updated the 5G modem too.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, MediaTek's always been kind of the fast follower to Qualcomm, right? And for many years they were sort of positioned as sort of the value play to Qualcomm. Let me ask you this: so when you look at the current roadmaps for Qualcomm and MediaTek, I mean, from a performance standpoint, I mean, Qualcomm continues to push the envelope, right? But is MediaTek gaining ground? Like, I mean, what's the difference here in performance?
I think that it's still kind of double digits. You're still looking at 20-30% for both CPU and GPU.
Yeah.
But the truth is that Qualcomm is doing the same thing. Apple's making lots of improvements as well. I will say, if anything, these Android guys are catching up to Apple. I think based on the performance that I saw, Qualcomm has effectively caught up or beat Apple.
Okay.
But MediaTek isn't quite there, but they're close. And I think that's a real interesting reality, is that Android SoCs are becoming much more competitive.
Yeah. Well, and when you look at the Android ecosystem as well, right? And my experience, I mean, I've been an iPhone user for years. I think at one point I did flip back to Android, but then I went back to iOS because my home automation stuff, just works well. I like the user interface. In fact, I picked up an iPhone Air, so it's my first week with it. I'm loving it. I just the UI and the ecosystem is super compelling. The one knock, and I knew this because I was talking to you about it, because I was debating, because I was moving from the 15 Pro Max, and I was debating between the 17 Pro Max and the Air. And it's the battery life, and certainly the battery is smaller capacity on the Air, but I'm loving the lightweight. I'm loving the design. I'm not currently using a case with it. I don't know if that's smart because I can be clumsy sometimes. But what's been your experience with the iPhone Air, since we're on the subject?
It's been pretty good. I will say, because it's not my primary smartphone, I can't really um, make a assessment on the battery life. But I was actually impressed that the performance, when I benchmarked it against the iPhone 17 Pro,
Yeah.
almost identical. It's a few percentage points difference. So I don't feel like you're sacrificing that much on performance with the Air,
Yeah.
but you might be on battery life. I haven't done a 5G comparison across both devices, but um, I have a feeling that the iPhone Pro is probably going to have a faster modem.
Yeah. My experience, I mean, definitely I noticed a difference in battery life. So I've ordered a slim MagSafe battery to carry with me when I travel, because I don't want to like put a big thick battery on this beautiful phone. And I thought the half an inch smaller screen would be an issue, um, but it's not really affecting my productivity. So I'm a total fan. So we'll see. I'm still in the honeymoon. It's just a weekend, but so far I'm impressed. And it's also great to hear that companies like MediaTek and Qualcomm are raising the bar on performance, and getting to that Apple level, and in some instances exceeding that level as well, right? So it's just great. It's raising the bar, and performance for any user, whether you're iOS or you're Android. But hey, with my third topic, I want to talk about something that I found pretty interesting. So there were a couple of articles written this week about China, and how China is now using in the name of national security, they're using some security controls to block Ericsson and Nokia. And this has been a trend that's been going on for quite some time. So when all of the rip and replace of Chinese infrastructure began, however many years ago that was, 4 or 5 years ago, and something that you and I have talked about quite a bit on this podcast. China, slowly, when you sort of looked at Nokia's and Ericsson's market share, just even 4 years ago, I think in the China market, it was 12 to 14% on average. Today, it's like 4%. So it's been shrinking dramatically. And, these articles that broke, I mean, I found, one on Business Standard, talks about how what China is doing is for foreign infrastructure providers, they're putting them through these very rigorous like certifications and security testing, sort of like what we saw other countries doing with Chinese infrastructure. And that obviously that's only on foreign infrastructure. It's not a requirement with Huawei or ZTE. And what that does is it's created 3 to 4 month windows of certification that are slowing their progress. And then a lot of times, these infrastructure providers aren't even providing the full kit portfolio, out of fear that they'll spend all that time and all that effort, and there's probably dollars attached to that as well. And then there's no certification. So I thought it was interesting to bring this up as a topic, because it's sort of like now China is kind of doing to the West what the West did to it, right? With all this rip and replace. So I don't know if you've caught any of the articles this week, but I'm not surprised. Are you surprised?
No, not in the slightest.
Yeah,
But I will say, I love me some geopolitics. So
I know you do.
thanks for the softball. Not talking about baseball now, but I don't really think it's a big deal, to be honest
Yeah,
with you. The Chinese market has always been a homegrown market,
it has.
and has been for probably the last 10 years, if not longer now.
Yeah,
So like, while I think that this is very much tit for tat, um, realistically, I don't think Nokia or Ericsson are particularly surprised or upset or expecting much. I'm surprised that they're shipping anything in China, to be honest
yeah.
with you, considering Huawei and ZTE and their role there.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think if anything, the Chinese carriers would want to have more choices so that they could get better pricing from Huawei and ZTE if that's possible.
Right.
Um, but generally speaking, this is more like of a paper thing than real business impact in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. When you look at their market share in 4 years ago, I mean, 12 to 14%. that's not a big piece of, their TAM, right? So, and now it's 4. So yeah, it's just interesting, tit for tat. We live in an interesting world these days with geopolitics, not only within tech but other areas as well. But
Totally.
yeah, totally. But hey, so for your third and final topic, this is pretty big news, and I caught it as well. And I know that you've had some journalists inbound into you about this, but ARM, and Qualcomm, there was a lawsuit that was settled, but the battle continues, I guess, right?
Yeah. So this is the battle that refuses to end, as most big legal battles do. I would say most of them end up in a settlement of some kind.
Yeah.
Um, but there's something different about this case, and the truth is, Qualcomm, ended up looking pretty victorious late last year, where they were victorious in 2 out of the 3 counts against them,
Hmm.
that were, you know, kind of levied by ARM, and the
Hmm.
third one was settled this week by the
Hmm.
judge, saying that Qualcomm, actually their subsidiary Nuvia, who they bought, was not in breach of contract.
Right.
But the thing is that one, ARM has already appealed, or says that they've appealed um, this verdict, because okay, they believe that they can do that.
Hmm.
But also, Qualcomm does have another lawsuit that they filed against ARM in the middle of last year,
Yeah.
pertaining to this whole contract and licensing dispute. Um, I do not have an update on that lawsuit, but that
Yeah.
is very much so in movement. So I believe that this is kind of um, a combination of ARM not giving up and Qualcomm not giving up either. Because I really thought Qualcomm would drop their lawsuit once the ARM thing against them had been settled.
Right.
But clearly they're choosing to keep this legal dispute going.
Yeah.
And truthfully, I was really hoping that the 2 companies would bury the hatchet once this was over. But clearly they haven't. Um, and I don't really think it's going to work out for ARM, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think ultimately it's a net negative for everyone, for this dispute to continue.
Yeah.
But I think that this is more about something more than just IP.
Right.
And I can't really put my finger on it, because um, it's all of the we don't have all of the facts. We all have only the facts that have been put into
That
court.
are public knowledge. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
there's just really bad blood between these 2 companies, right? I mean,
Yeah, and it's
someone
really
called someone
unfortunate.
else's mother like a nasty name or something. There's something more to this, to your point, than just the intellectual property and what ARM
Yeah,
contends from a licensing perspective with
exactly.
the startup that
I would say there's
yeah,
something personal, right?
yeah,
And the truth is that I don't think it's good for either company, and I really hope that it just ends, fairly soon.
yeah.
But yeah, in general, I think that there's no real good outcome for this, and I was really hoping that they would settle, and they haven't. So
Mhm.
yeah, it didn't really. I wish I had more answers, but the truth is that, like, I think this just needs to go away,
Yeah.
and I think that's everyone's best interest.
It's just a distraction, and it's like both companies are paying attorneys gobs of money to keep
The
fighting this
lawyers win.
in court. Yeah. So, well, hey, my friend, it's been another great podcast. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to provide insights on a specific 5G topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Whaletown Tech, and I'm at Onshell Sog. We hope you have a great weekend, and please tune in again next week. And don't forget to rate and subscribe.